On identity. I hadn't really thought much about identities in an explicit way until quite recently. And now I think about it, I wonder what it is and why seem to be suffering, certainly in parts of the West, with an identity crisis. Identity, I suppose, means who you are, who you think you are. I am a male, I am a certain countryman, and so on and so on. And I think the reason I hadn't thought about it much is that I'd just taken it for granted. I knew who I was. I was born, brought up, educated in a certain way. And so I went through my life not questioning that aspect of my life. But the one way I'd thought about it was that I'd realized that we all have mixed identities. It was a truism of anthropology that our identities shift depending on the context and who we're talking to. So to give an example from my academic world, my identity, if I'm talking to someone in another college in Cambridge, is I'm a King's man, someone from King's College. Then my identity shifts if I'm talking to someone from another university, I'm a Cambridge man. And then if I'm talking for someone from another country, I'm an Englishman, and so on. So we have plural identities, and the idea that we can only stick to one is ridiculous. And it solves quite a lot of problems to realize that we move up and down in our identities. But the other aspect of identity, which is the core features of who we are, given features like male or female, or like white or black, or whatever it is. These, and even class identities, and even in terms of our tastes and education, these seemed to be fixed. What has happened very recently, it appears that we have identity wars, that different identities are in opposition to each other in terms of gender, colour, and so on, and also that people are self-ascribing, they're shifting their identities. So I now have to think about these things which I took for granted. Am I really a male? Should I be thinking about myself as a female? I mean, I used to play games of that kind. My granddaughters used to dress me up as a woman and say, "You're a woman." And I used to be rather pleased because I like women and wouldn't mind at all. But there was no question of me changing my identity like that. But now we know this is a very widespread interest, and people are shifting their gender and sex and so on. I'm not so sure this is happening in the same way with colour, but again, when I start to examine my own identity, I realise that having thought of myself mainly as an Englishman, I discover that I am 5/8 Scottish, and in certain situations I would tend to emphasise that in conversations with people. So I am finding a slipping, sliding sort of world in terms of identity, which wasn't around me in my childhood. And I think this is a real cause of a great deal of anxiety, because if the pillars on which our life is built, the foundations, are under challenge and under constant transition, and the causes, of course, are another matter to do with all sorts of social and technological and intellectual changes. If our very core identities are threatened and we find ourselves wondering, who am I? I've gone through all these years of my life, but I really don't know myself or what I am. Then we can face real existential problems. And the globalization of the world, the pluralization, the multiculturalism is another background feature, which means that many people are reacting against that very globalization, not because of that really, but because it represents a challenge to their very essence and what they consider themselves to be. So identity is a really important topic to think about.